Hello and welcome to Summit Series by Elevation Capital. Today our guest is Nitin Saluja, CEO and co-founder of Chaayos. Chaayos, as you know, is India's largest tea cafe chain spread across 6 cities with 210 cafes. The company started 10 years back and since then has become India's most loved chai cafe brand. Welcome, Nitin.
Thank you, Deepak. It's a pleasure to be here.
So Nitin, tell us about how this whole idea of setting up a chai cafe chain came about. You were obviously very happily doing well in a MNC consulting firm, opening a chai cafe as far as could be from anybody's core competence. So how did this idea came about? What were you thinking? What excited you?
So we'll go back maybe 30 years. That's when I was about 8 years old. That's when my mom taught me how to make a good cup of chai, and I became like the default guy. Somebody would come home, ki Nitin chai bana do, and I would never mind that. I would just do that automatically. Would consider that as my part of the job. Little did I realize that I started liking making a good cup of chai, and that continued with me for my life. So I think that was one very simple event that kind of took seat at that tender age that I like to make a good cup of chai. Nobody's parent would really think about or talk about making this into a profession. No kid would ever think about it, and life went on. Continued with my studies. Went to IIT. Graduated, and in fact, before graduating, I started with a senior of mine my first venture, which became profitable in the second month itself. We started to make shitloads of money, I would say, and over the course of next year and a half, the business became really solid. That's when I was about to graduate, but I had this in my head that I have to take up a consulting job. I did not apply for any other role at IIT. I only applied to consulting firms. The entire idea was actually an amalgamation of the fact that the subconscious love for making chai and the desire after first startup to start up again and be out there in the middle of the action. I think the amalgamation of two kind of came together. Chaayos happened to be my third idea that I was constantly working on, and it like a typical consultant, I would make decks for myself to just make sure that everything is falling in place, and the opportunity is as large as it seems to be on the face of it, and not really just my figment of imagination that, oh, India does not have a good cup of chai, let's build something. So that's how the entire thing started. The good and the bad part of this was that people had tried building businesses around chai, cafes around chai, and people had failed. The good part of it was that I could research about them. I could pick what went wrong with them, and not make those same obvious mistakes when I was starting up. The bad part about it was that category building is the hardest that any entrepreneur can ever really think about. A consumption of a particular commodity or a particular service that does not exist at all. That's one of the hardest things that an entrepreneur can subscribe for. But yeah. The problem was large enough. Everybody in India drinks 2 cups of chai daily, and there are several millions of roadside chai tapris. The moment people are outside of home, they don't really have a good opportunity to grab a good cup of chai. So the consumption was very high. Consumption out of home was happening at a very low cost roadside tapris. So the entire opportunity was large. It was certainly an uphill task of creating that consideration outside of home. Everything kind of came together. Yosha, my wife, she subscribed to the idea, decided to move back to India, and yeah, Chaayos was started 10 years ago.
So when you started out, did you have, I know it's a cliche, but did you have a vision of what you want to build? How large, was there a objective goal you set for yourself, or was it more like, let's try and see if it works or doesn't work?
So actually, that was one of the key considerations after my first startup. While we were making very good money in my first stint, I knew at the back of my head this is never going to be insanely large. As a kid, also, whenever I imagined myself running a business, it was never really about something niche, something small. It always as a kid, I would only dream of something really large. So that was a mandatory condition for me when I was starting up, that it has to be large, it has to be impactful, it has to be much bigger than what I can ever imagine to be. With this very large, let me say, fuzzy goal, my immediate step when I started out was very short term. I was like, we will give it 6 months. I had invested savings from my job life into starting up. Half of my savings went into starting into the first Chaayos store, and the remaining half of my savings, they were used to sustain myself, my wife Yosha, and our 3-month-old daughter Brinda. And the short-term goal was, we have to make this work in 6 months. If I'm not able to make it work in 6 months, I'll be out of cash. Maybe I'll go back and take up a job somewhere else. So the immediate goal was very short term, the long term goal was very large. And it was just an outcome of the fact that India drinks enough and more chai to be able to build a very large business around it.
Understood. No, very interesting. So when you started, when reality hit in say the first 12 to 18 months, what were some of the positive surprises and challenges that you probably didn't anticipate?
So one of the most positive surprise when we started out was people were willing to pay $40 at that point of time for a cup of chai. It was a price point I was testing out. It was not really a price point. There is very little science in when you come out with a new category, what should you price it at? So you are constantly experimenting. What was a very pleasant surprise for me was that people acknowledged that this is a high quality product. People were willing to pay $40 for it. Another very happy surprise was same people started to come to our store multiple times a day, every day. So you give a good consistent product, you priced it at a certain price, people are coming back to you multiple times a day. I think that was the most pleasant surprise. I had hoped subconsciously that should happen, that would happen. But when that happened, that was one of the most pleasant surprises, I would say. When reality hit, one of the simplest learnings was that when you stand for 10 hours a day at one place, your back hurts. I was the manager of the first store because we did not know anything about the business. So the only way to learn business was to be at the stores, learn it yourself firsthand, and that is what taught me the basics of the business. And very simple learning coming from that. You are able to give a good product. You are able to talk to the customer nicely. Your store looks neat and clean. That's the basic of our business. We can make our business as fancy sounding as it may be, but that's what the customer is really there for. A good product, a very nice place to sit, and a good conversation while placing their order, and leave everything else to them. They will have a good time. I was when I started out alone. So what was always sitting in my head was, I will need a co-founder because it's a large vision. It will need more people to become a part of the team. That's when 7 months down the line, Raghav came on board, and to be able to get a guy like Raghav to be my co-founder was one of the best things that happened in that early time, and we continue to be the partners in crime.
Awesome. So you met your 6-month timeline, stuck it out. As you decided, as I'm aware, in terms of expanding the number of locations, I mean, there are multiple dimensions: geography, type of format of stores, expanding the team, central kitchens, and other. So what are some of the thoughts that went through? How did you design the scale up? At least the operational scale-up part. So, very integral part was having a central kitchen right from day one of Chaayos. Interesting.
We always knew if this works, it will be multiple locations, and we cannot be possibly cooking at multiple locations. It has to be a central kitchen. So central kitchen was set up on day one. So that was a part of the design when we were going live with our first store. when we opened up our second store, we were yet on our path to do price discovery. So when the chai was being sold at 40 bucks at the first store, it was being sold at the second store at 60 bucks.
Okay.
It led to some concerns from some of those overlapping customers, but pretty similar learnings from second store as well, that the customer is willing to pay 60 bucks and come to you multiple times a day, every day. Pricing is always a discovery mechanism. Central Kitchen sorted on day one pricing continuously in a discovery method. What exactly would the customer really like along with their cup of chai? What different kinds of chai will they like? I think we continue to do, and we still continue with that approach. We do multiple product launches every year. In fact, as we talk today, we've launched our winter menu for 2022. We've launched our staple Gud Wali chai, which is like a 3-month a year kind of a product that's back. We have an almonds chai, and we have 2 rolls that we've launched today. So nationally, those 4 products have been rolled out. So we continue to experiment with a lot of products. A lot of products became success and still continue to be a part of our menu. Some products did not get equal acceptance. They were out of the menu. In fact, one of the most craziest experiment we did, we launched something called as a rocket chai, and that's literally what it was called on the menu. And it was a chai where you could not get the customizations done. It was a chai that came at a lower price. That was a chai that we promised to hand it out to you in under 60 seconds. What we were trying to experiment was whether customer is looking to get maybe a slightly cheaper chai and okay to compromise with customization of chai and get it real fast. And lo and behold, that experiment tanked. Nobody really wanted to come to Chaayos and have a prefixed chai. People really indulged into customization of their chai. People were willing to pay more, but go for customization. So all those different kinds of product experiments, they continued. From very early on, our first store was a business park. We heard from some customers itself, oh, this is a business park. It works here. It might be difficult to find acceptance at a high street. We were of a contrary view that in offices you get chai for free, and still you are coming here to pay 40 bucks for a cup of chai. It's a harder problem to solve, but because we were not too sure, the second store we opened up at a high street. And the fourth store, the third and the fourth store, we opened up again in business parks. Then we continued to add different kinds of formats: highways, food courts, hospitals, educational institutes. And today, I would say after 10 years, except for highways, I think we do very well at pretty much all the kinds of locations that we have experimented with. We in fact also run some cloud kitchens to conduct our deliveries. So I think the size and format experiment, after these 10 years, we've very clearly realized that 700 to 800 square feet kind of stores, that's the ideal size for us. Across all kinds of locations, they work well for us.
Understood. And obviously the menu items changed, but were there any things in design principles in terms of what food to have? Because it's not very common for a chai cafe to have as elaborate as menu as Chaayos has. So what was the thinking behind it? Any trade-offs, hard constraints or design rules?
Sure. Lots of constraints which were an outcome of hard design calls. Let me say it like that. For example, we did not want to serve anything at a Chaayos that does not go well with a cup of chai. So you sip a chai and you have a bite of some food product from Chaayos. They should create some harmony in your mouth. Until unless that happens, this food product is not going to be long. So that's the reason you would not see a pasta or a pizza or things of that nature at a Chaayos. When we started out, we had some breakfasty snacks, we had some evening kind of snacks, we had some sandwiches. What we realized that customer was consuming all those products right from 8 a.m. when our stores opened up in the morning, and there were afternoon hours where there was a lull. There was dinner hours when there was a lull. And we continue to introduce products for those hours of the day. For example, our kullad pav bhaji is a brilliant meal that goes very well with a cup of chai, or kullad matar kulcha, so on and so forth. So we continue to add products to be an all-day place. We continue to only add products that go well with a cup of chai. We continue to only add those products that we could do justice. They are made at our central kitchens every day, and they are shipped to our stores fresh every morning. No food product at Chaayos is frozen or has any sort of preservatives or anything of that nature. As I say it internally, every food item or every beverage item that we sell at Chaayos, if Brinda, my daughter, can consume that, and I am not going to be worried about it. It is okay to be launched, and otherwise it's not. So several different constraints that we put for ourselves out of just the way we were designing how to go about the whole thing.
Got it. No, that's very interesting. At least one other thing which obviously I'm aware of is that unlike many food services business, you have consciously chosen to be only in 6 cities today, even at the current scale, versus most others would go very diverse geographically. So what is the thinking behind that?
So our business is a business of network effect. Our customers do not travel for a cup of chai, at least yet. Chai consumption happens where they are. So if I'm not close to your house, you'll miss out on an occasion to consume chai from Chaayos. If I do not deliver to your house, you will possibly miss out on an occasion to consume chai from Chaayos. If I'm not in your office, under your office building, you'll miss out on that occasion. So our strategy from day one was to go as deep as possible into a city rather than go wide. Also, let me say it like that, except for some of the American QSR brands who've come with very set SOPs, who've come with very set playbook, anybody else that has tried to build up a business in India at least and go wide real soon, the writing is on the wall that this is not a business where you should try to go to too many geographies at once, because every city has its own nuance, every city has its operational nuance. Unless you are able to champion them, there is no value in just going to those many number of cities. Rather, our 210 stores, they are all done in these 6 cities, and we believe that's the right way to go about building a business like ours.
Understood. How did the team change as you scaled up? What skill sets you have to add? What were some of the learnings in terms of building a team which is in a business which is a little different from a typical tech startup?
So early on, it was just me and Raghav. We had hired few experienced folks from some of the other brands to run operations for us. As we started, as we kind of were sometime in middle of 2015, after our Series A capital raise. In fact, it was one evening where I was sitting with one of our ops managers, and he was trying to explain why wastage at few of the stores is high. And I remember distinctly recall it was one of the stores where vada pav wastage was very high for the last week. And I asked a simple question that why should there not be a way for us to make sure that these vada pavs A were ordered in the right quantity, and B, if for some whatever customer demand reason, if we have some vada pavs that are about, so, and our products expire every night. So fresh product cooked, expired tonight, fresh product the next day, expires tonight. So if in case something is about to expire, we should be able to just reach out to our customers and be able to say that, hey, your favorite vada pav, let's say, is available to you after 5 p.m. at some XYZ discount. And that's when it struck me that after 3 years of being in business, I was building business the way a McDonald's or a Subway or any other old school brand would have been built, without knowing anything about who my customer is, what does this customer consume. And that's when we realized that we need to take charge of this, and we need to be able to influence we need to be able to first understand what our customers' behavior is, and then be able to influence it for the best possible customer experience. That's when the entire technology backbone of the organization started to get built. That's when our CTO came on. We got Mohit as our CTO on board, and little did we realize that very little work had happened as far as food and beverage tech is concerned. There were point of sale solutions available for ages that many large brands were using. But just to be able to know who the customer is, what the customer's consumption pattern is like, nobody was doing that. That's when we introduced a customer screen at our stores. That's where our customers enter their phone number. We run a loyalty program. Customers love to get their free Chaayos at Chaayos. So that was a whole new DNA, whole new muscle, let me say, that started to get built in 2015. In 2016, we started to build that deep quality and customer experience focus. I distinctly recall in 2016, when we had done our first large NPS survey, our NPS came out to be 13 or 17, something like that, a very small abysmal number. That's when we literally, I went out to the senior team and said, let's stop adding new stores. If we do not fix our customer experience, there is no value in adding new stores, and we are only going to be in for a rude surprise. That's when the real good customer experience muscle of the organization started to get built. And while you are building on all these muscles, different kind of people get plugged into the organization at different time. And that is, I don't think there is a blueprint for how an organization or a team gets built. It is what different kinds of muscles that you are trying to build now that define who you should get on board, what kind of people you should get on board. So we continue to add different muscles over this period of time. For example, in 2016, we hired somebody to lead our delivery business when delivery itself was tiny. We would run our own call center, we would take orders, we would have our delivery fleet, we would do all of that, but it had to be done by somebody else. That's when the muscle around being able to deliver. So when in 2018 Swiggy, Zomato, they started to grow rapidly, we were already game for that kind of a DNA. Right. So I think it's just what you require as an org, as leaders. That's what defines how the team evolves over time.
That's true. I think just related to the team and organization, one thing which I feel very fascinated by is any Chaayos store I walk into. It's not just the smell and everything, the vibe is very similar. The front-facing executives are very similar in terms of how they operate. So how have you ensured that the culture is disseminated across these many outlets, across these many cities? Are there any unique insights you would want to share?
Actually, it's a tricky question because internally we continue to feel that we can do a much better job.
Okay.
And as you mentioned this, a lot of people mention this to me and ask me what really have we done. Actually, the answer is super simple. The doggedness of just not letting things slip, and every time something slips, somebody should get into it to try to fix it as far as customer experience is concerned. That's the real answer. Everything else is tools to enable you to do that. If you see air conditioning not being perfect at a store, somebody should say something to someone and get it fixed. If you just become complacent about it after a point, first you should have mechanisms to be able to track it, so that becomes your tool. You should have that intent and doggedness to be able to just make that happen. I'll give you examples. We have 2 audits, internal audits being done at every store every month. These audits are around product quality, service, cleanliness, cash, inventory. So 6 kind of audits twice every month happen at every store. Then there are mystery audits being done by customers who go in with a predefined form. Our team does not know that, oh, this is a mystery shopper. And you are able to pick it, you are able to pick out trends, you are able to pick out gaps. And somebody needs to ensure that we are on top of it to fill up those gaps. For example, all our training happens online for our teams. So anybody you would see at a Chaayos, majority of them would not have been trained inside a training academy. We've just recently, like 8 months back, we've launched our training academy to be able to fast track training for our teams. But majority of our team still is the one that has been trained by looking at videos and their superiors training them on different things. So I think everything else is just tool to enable it, be it NPS, be it these audits, be it mystery shoppers. What makes it really happen is that doggedness of it's boring, mundane, day to day, 210 stores. 3 things can break in every transaction: the hygiene, the product, or the conversation. It gets boring after a point of time. So how you do not get bored from it is the key, I think.
So what provides you that excitement? So like, what is a source of joy and happiness as you?
Oh yeah. So the biggest source of joy for me is number one. If I am passing by somewhere and somebody happens to say something positive about Chaayos experience, some customer happens to say something positive about Chaayos experience, that's the most unsolicited kind of feedback you can ask from anyone, and that's how customers operate.
Right.
They don't fully logically operate on everything. It was good or it was not good. As simple as that. That's what everything boils down to. So that gives me a lot of joy. To be able to see Chaayos do well in places where Chaayos is little known, or Chaayos was absent in a brand new geography, that gives me personally a lot of joy. To be able to see our team at the stores grow. For example, the guy who's a manager of this store, One Horizon store, Praveen has been at Chaayos for over 6 years. The lady who was leading this store before Praveen, she's just transferred to another store. She's been with Chaayos for 9 years. They all joined as team members, and they've grown to become managers and area managers at Chaayos. That just growth coming their way as an outcome of their hard work gives me infinite joy. The last thing that I will certainly say, to be able to create this chai culture in the country. Chai has existed in the country in a certain shape and form in our houses, on the roadside, but just to be able to create that chai culture where people just walk into a store confidently, knowing they can get a very good cup of chai, they can spend their 45 minutes chatting with a friend or doing something else. That chai culture, creation of that chai culture gives a lot of cake. And I think that's the major guiding light as well. That's what keeps me going. That the job is just started. We've just started to scratch the surface to be able to eventually build that chai culture, like brands have built coffee culture or beer culture somewhere, or Nike has built street culture. To be able to build something that becomes a part of day-to-day culture, that gives me a lot of cake.
Understood. Oh, very inspiring. So what does the future hold for Chaayos? What do you plan for next, say, 3 to 4 years?
In fact, I'll respond for a larger horizon first. Maybe if I look 20 years ahead, I believe major part of the country would have stopped making chai at their homes. People would either be walking to a Chaayos in 5 minutes from wherever they are, or people would be getting Chaayos delivered to their homes. That's when truly the chai culture would have been built. I believe that's where we are headed. It would be a long journey, is something that I kind of subconsciously knew from day one. I subscribed to that as a really long journey. That's where my inspiration really lies. If I were to look at midterm in 5 years from now, I think we would be at a couple thousand locations spread across the country. Not sure, but maybe we may have some international presence as well. That's what I would put as a short-term, medium-term, 5-year kind of a thing. But yeah, even after 5 years, I think the chai culture thing, we would still be far from it. That will further take more time.
Understood. Awesome. So since the primary audience of this show is early stage founders or people who want to be founders, what are some of the learnings or suggestions or advice from your journey that you would want to share?
Handful of them, but just in interest of time, I'll share a few. I would not advise anybody solving a problem without the confidence that it can be really large outcome when they get down to it, because as an entrepreneur, you are subscribing to shitty times. You are subscribing to everything going against you. And when everything goes against you, how do you find motivation in what you are trying to do? And motivation is usually found in something much larger than what you are. It is not found in smaller outcomes. So I think that is one thing. And it's being able to go for a large outcome has nothing really to do with how much valued can you be, how much money can you make for yourself. Because most successful entrepreneurs who I have met, money has rarely been their motivation. Everybody ends up making very good money, but that's a byproduct. That if that's the motivation, I don't know how to process that. It is usually something to be able to make something much larger than ourselves. So that's the real intent of saying build something large and not something small, because large things inspire everybody. You go to a Taj Mahal inspires you for its magnanimity. You go to a Qutub Minar, it inspires you for what it really is. You look at Ola cabs today. Ola cabs, the culture of mobility or the ease of mobility that they've been able to build in this country, that inspires you. An amazing small outcome does not really inspire people in tough times. So that would be my advice number one. And be very ruthless about it. Don't be very shallow about that, thinking whether this can be really large or not. That will certainly be one advice. For somebody who's looking to become an entrepreneur, I will certainly advise to be debt free, because that gives you wings. That does not create any fear of failure in your head. If it's failure, it's failure. You should not really worry. You will not need to worry about, how will I pay my home mortgage? How will I pay my car mortgage? How will I pay this personal loan? Blah, 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 blah. Be debt free. It is another thing that I will say is it is a very important skill to be able to build a great team around you. It should not, we were talking about it earlier today, it should not happen before time, it should not happen too delayed. And you will never be perfect, but in that ballpark, you should be able to attract the right talent to be a part of your mission, because it takes a very good team to build a very good business. Rarely 2, 3, 4 people have been able to get to large, great outcomes. And maybe the last one that I will say is, because you are subscribing to shitty times, tough times, it becomes very important to live with the acceptance that, and I'll quote somebody else, I don't know who has said this, but run when you can, walk if you have to, crawl if you must. Just keep moving forward. I think that's very important, because a lot of times entrepreneurs want to give up, but it's okay. We subscribe to it. What is happening is nothing but okay, obvious. We wish it did not happen, but now that it has happened, we have to find ways to move forward. So yeah, that will be my last one.
No, that's terrific thoughts. Thank you. So thank you so much, Nitin. It was very inspiring, touching, and I think we found great insights into your conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deepak. Thanks a lot.